Amazon for over a week. It's called the Liberty Amendments. The great one, Mark Levin, joining us from his bunker in an undisclosed location. Sir, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Sean?
I guess next they'll be singing songs to Castro after this, Mark.
Yeah, why not? I mean, we're adopting the Castro agenda, aren't we? Obamacare is not only is it a complete disaster, but I'm afraid, Sean, we're never going to get rid of it because the Republicans don't want to get rid of it. And instead of taking on Obama and taking on the left, they're taking on the conservatives and the constitutionalists and attacking them, telling us to wait till tomorrow and the next day. These French Republicans, they're always surrendering. And the fact of the matter is, if they're not going to use the power of the purse to at least attack the discretionary funding, or if they're not going to use the power of the purse in the House to pass a continuing resolution that funds part of the government but not this part of the government, what's left? Once this thing is instituted, it's not going to implode. I hear this, oh, the law's going to implode. Have you ever heard of an imploding law?
No,
You
never.
have to repeal a law. You have to defund a law. Laws don't implode. I don't even know what they're talking about.
Well, for me, Mark,
They say they're, yeah.
This is a line in the sand because every one of these guys ran on repealing Obamacare and replacing it, every one of them. And I know the House, they had all these, I guess, symbolic votes to repeal it, but none of them had teeth in it. Now's a moment of truth. And if they don't do it, as far as I'm concerned, they're not any better than the Democrats because they're not even fighting. They don't represent anything different.
And they won't even fight. I mean, you got to give this to the left. They never give up. They fought for 100 years for government-run health care. These guys can't even fight for 2 weeks. All the government might shut down, and we'll get blamed for it. See this list here? Sorry, I left my third grade whiteboard at home. I actually graduated high school and I use what's called paper. See this list here? These are all the times the federal government has been shut down. Republican presidents, Democrat presidents, Republican houses and Senates, Democrat houses and Senate. They talk about a political catastrophe if we shut down the government like we did in '95 and '96 for 3 weeks. Sean, we gained 2 seats in the Senate, lost 9 in the House after a big House win. These were soft House seats. We kept a huge majority in the House, picked up 2 seats in the Senate, moved toward a balanced budget, got workfare in the welfare program, and the Republicans today are claiming that that's the political disaster if we stand strong.
All right, let's cut through the clutter. Let's walk through. All right, so they come back from their August recess and vacation, and let's say they fund the military, they fund Social Security and Medicare, every aspect of the government, our debt, our obligations, they fund it all, except for Obamacare. Then they send it over to the Senate, the majority. They have the power of the purse in the House. Let's walk through this. So the government is fully funded but for Obamacare. Then it goes to the Senate. Let's say they don't pick it up. Then who's responsible?
Well, they're afraid that they don't have the intelligence, the confidence, the knowledge, or the ability to articulate who's actually shutting down the government. Now, I don't speak for the Republican Party, hardly, but do you realize every weekend the government is shut down? Do you realize every holiday the government is shut down? I like the weekends. I like my holidays when the government is shut down.
Me too.
And these essential personnel, they never go home, whether it's Department of Agriculture, the EPA, or so forth. There are federal laws in place for so-called essential personnel. So, I mean, we've been through this. They act like we haven't. But let me ask you a question. Do you ever play poker and show the other side your hand? Well,
Never.
do you show the other side your hand? They're running around saying, don't shut down the government, don't shut down the government. And so what does Obama say? They're going to shut down the government. I mean, I've never seen such incompetent politics by these Republicans.
It's worse than incompetence. It's cowardly. And, you know, look, there was a report back a couple of months ago that you and Governor Palin had talked about maybe having a third party. Now, Reagan addressed this. You worked in the Reagan administration, and he said, no, we need a revitalized second party. Now, if this isn't the issue to revitalize the Republican Party, then they're letting this opportunity go. And I would argue that conservatives like myself and like yourself, I'm done with the Republicans if they don't fight here. I will not vote for it. I will not support. I will not endorse. I will not anybody that doesn't have the courage to stand up on this issue, because it's devastating to the country. We'll never be able to sustain it. Do you think that movement will be big?
I think so. I think it's certainly possible. Here's the thing. The American people don't even like this law. The more they learn about it, the more of it that's implemented, and Obama's trying to hide parts of it until after the midterm elections, the worse it's going to be. Can you imagine? The Republicans are being handed an issue of a generation. Obama is destroying health care. He's destroying people's policies. He's driving up costs. He's creating dislocation. They can lay that all at his feet. It's been handed to them, and they're such mush heads and marble mouths, they can't even articulate the case against it.
Let me talk about the legal aspects of Obamacare. You are a constitutional lawyer. By the way, congratulations. Your book's been #1 for over a week on Amazon.com. I have no doubt it will debut #1 on the New York Times. Obama's missed now half the deadlines for implementing Obamacare. Now, this was not even passed, as far as I'm concerned, in a legal fashion. From a legal point of view, if that's the law and the deadlines are not met, does the president unilaterally have the authority to say he's not going to implement, for example, the employer mandate or any of the other areas where they put in delays?
If you're asking me if this president violates federal law repeatedly, the answer is yes. If you're asking me if this president violates the Constitution repeatedly, including the separation of powers doctrine, the answer is yes. If you're asking me if anybody's going to do anything about it, not a single person.
Why?
Which is one of the reasons, by the way, I wrote the Liberty Amendments.
But why?
Why? Well, look at John Boehner and Mitch McConnell. Do you think they're going to do anything about it? The Supreme Court gave its imprimatur to not only an unconstitutional law, it rewrote the Constitution and rewrote the law to put it in place. This is the point. If we think that we're going to have some kind of liberty reformation or revitalization of our Constitution with a federal government that has created its own design, with Democrats who keep dragging us over the cliff and Republicans who keep standing there watching, we're not, which is the reason I wrote the book in the first place.
What do you make of the challenges now that exist for incumbent senators like Lindsey Graham and Lamar Alexander? You're getting these Tea Party candidates now stepping up, and they're challenging them. Do you think that they're viable alternatives and that these guys may pay a price for not fighting?
I don't know every candidate in every case, but I say more power to them. We need as many capable, articulate, to the extent we can get them well-funded candidates to challenge these French Republicans as possible. Lindsey Graham is a disaster. Well, I mean, I can pick almost any issue in which he's a disaster. Lamar Alexander is one of the most liberal Republicans in the United States Senate. I don't even know what this guy stands for.
Let me play devil's advocate. What do you say to all those people that say, well, those moderates, they're the ones that can get elected, and the Republicans need to be more moderate, which I don't believe, by the way. But what do you say to those? Because I hear it all the time. I hear it said on this network.
You mean
but I have
we can only elect
on,
moderates?
They say it. What?
Right. We can only elect moderates from South Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky? I don't think that's accurate at all. We can elect solid conservatives from those states, and in the past we have. What happens is these guys, they get to Washington, D.C., and immediately, boom. Rather than them representing us in Washington, they represent the federal government to us, and they're trying to convince us to go along. I've had it. You've had it. Millions of us have had it.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back more with the great one, Mark Levin, his new book, The Liberty Amendments, in bookstores everywhere. And welcome back to Hannity. We continue with the author of the brand new book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, the great one, Mark Levin. All right, one last question before I move on to some other topics. You're calling the Republicans the French Republicans. If they don't wage a fight on Obamacare, in your opinion, time for a third party?
You know, that's not a decision I can make. What I try to do
for
is,
yourself.
Well, I mean, you know, I vote the way I want to vote anyway, write-in people and so forth. It's not a question of a third party, fourth party, or fifth party, or whatever party. What I'm trying to express in this book and so forth is why we should continue to fight at the national level, fight the Republican Party within the Republican Party, fight the Democrats. We have a systemic problem in a post-constitutional period, and what I'm arguing for is, in addition to all that, if we think Washington's going to redesign itself and breathe life back into the Constitution, it's not. The Constitution provides the salvation for the Constitution in Article 5 with the state convention process, where we, the people, working from the bottom up through our states over a period of time, even those of us in dark, dark blue states, you never know, events are going to change the politics of a given state and so forth. We have to seize back what is ours, and what is ours is a constitutional republic, And right now, I don't know what we have, but it's becoming increasingly authoritarian.
There seems to be this divide. There's the Tea Party movement, which I kind of consider myself part of, and then there's a more establishment wing. Every time we have a primary election, it ends up, you got Dole, McCain, Romney, more moderate Republicans. And you worked
lose.
Okay, point. You worked under Ronald Reagan. As you look at the horizon,
win.
Okay, you look into the horizon, and I'm looking at Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and Rand Paul and others, and I'm wondering, are they the future? Scott Walker, maybe a governor? You've been outspoken against Christie. Explain the difference.
Well, let's hope they're the future of the Republican Party. The Republican Party has no future. I am convinced that a lot of these people who've been around Washington for 20, 30, 40 years are very comfortable with their environment. They have no intention of breathing life back into the Constitution. They put out their press releases. They spew their platitudes. They have their phony votes about repeal rather than using the power of the purse. I'm fed up with it. Those tricks don't work anymore. If you're not in Washington to help save this country, then get out.
All right.
That's why I support these challenges in the Republican primaries. That said, I really believe that even the most politically muscular and intelligent conservative as president and so forth cannot really reverse the trajectory of the nation for the past 100 years, and that we, the people, have to take matters constitutionally and civilly into our own hands under the Constitution.
But there seems that there's got to be a revitalization here, because I think you're raising a lot of good points, and I think their unwillingness to fight on Obamacare is probably just a symptom of a larger problem. But it seems
what
to
are
me,
they willing to fight on in anything?
I agree.
Anything. Just name one thing.
But the point I'm trying to make here, it seems to me for America, and you point out in the book that we now have unfunded liabilities, record debt deficits, that to the tune of $90 trillion. So the question is, are we going to have people that are going to fight, really change the system to limited government, or do the next Republican president just manages the decline and it just takes a little longer to get there?
I'm afraid at this point we have these respites. You know, we had the great Ronald Reagan for 8 years who really fought hard and began to turn the ship of state back, and what happened? We get another Republican. He immediately lurches into this compassionate conservatism, kindler and gentler conservatism, which really is just mealy-mouthed for let's lurch back into big government republicanism. And prior to Obama, the most profligate administration was W's administration, with 6 years of Republican rule in the House and the Senate. I just have concluded after 40 years of looking at this and studying this and participating in it, that our answers are less at the federal level, although we ought to fight them, and more at the grassroots, bottom-up, federalism level.
What about Ted Cruz? What about Rand? What about Mike Lee, Rubio, all these guys that are, for example, fighting to defund Obamacare? I mean, any of them? I know you've always liked Ted Cruz. It appears his citizenship is real. He's gone to Iowa, New Hampshire.
Well, people ought to look at the 1790 Naturalization Act. Ted Cruz is as much as a citizen as anybody else in this country. His mother was and is an American citizen, and so is he. So enough of that nonsense. And he's going to give up his Canadian citizenship that he didn't even know that he had. I went back and looked. I said, hell, do I have Canadian citizenship? I don't even know either. But I don't, obviously. So that's just nonsense. But that said, obviously, I was one of the first to endorse him in the Republican primary in Texas, and what happened? The establishment rose up. They spent millions and millions of dollars to defeat him, but the people beat them back. Same with Mike Lee. Mike Lee, in a convention in Utah, had to beat the establishment, and he did. But, you know, we can pick, and Rand Paul, among others, Rubio and so forth, but these are 4 or 3 or 2. And you know, and it's a very slow and daunting process.
But if the people support any of those guys, then they'll get the nomination. Last question. There seems to be a coronation of Hillary Clinton. What do you make of her? Do you think she's a formidable candidate?
I said before, and I'll say it again, she's Barack Obama in a dress. I was wrong. She's Barack Obama in a pantsuit. And look, none of these elections are inevitable. I mean, they tried to coronate her before, right? And then Barack Obama, with his extensive 2 years of experience in the Senate and his extensive accomplishments as a backbencher in the state Senate in Illinois, whipped her. So she's not, her presidency is not inevitable, unless, of course, we nominate another French Republican from the Northeast or some other part of the country. We will lose.